Hello, everybody. This is your host, Patricia Tomlinson. Thank you so much for taking your time and tuning into the dialogue. Today, I am very excited. We have a special guest in the building. Her name is Tempestt Moore, and this section was pre recorded. So, I'm going to go ahead and not take up too much of your time. However, she will introduce herself and everything that she's into, and also give you guys a glimpse of her battle with depression and how she actually overcame. I want to put this disclaimer that no, she was not actually clinically diagnosed with depression, meaning she didn't go to the doctor. However, many of us know when there's something wrong. We understand ourselves and know when something is going on. You can be going through a dark time in your life. Someone could have passed. Someone could have committed suicide. You could have went through a divorce. You could have lost a friendship, a relationship, or a job, occupation. You could have moved and been feeling sad and lonely, and it's just sending you through a dark time right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go into the segment. Last but not least, this series is dedicated to the month of October. So for all of October, as I state in the podcast, I'm actually going to be going ahead and dedicating a lot of these episodes to depression awareness, because it is Mental Health and Depression Awareness Month, where you can actually go and get screened for depression. So in lieu of that, because the seasons are changing, the time is changing, we're not going to have as much sunlight. I thought that it would be a good idea to go ahead and get some light when the seasons are changing, and we might not have as much light in the daytime as well, because the world is just getting very dark right now as far as violence. People's hearts are growing cold. So this is just to give some light and some love and make your life feel a little bit more hopeful in the time that we are in. So without further ado, let us go into the podcast, and here is my lovely friend Tempest. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and this is your host, Patricia Tomlinson. Thank you so much for tuning into the dialogue. Thank you so much for you guys that have subscribed to listen to the content. Today, we have a very special guest in the building, and yes, she is actually in the building in my physical studio with me today. So I'm excited. This is a really good mutual friend, someone that has been there for me during a time of transition that I'm not even going to go into right now, but it was actually helping me at times when I was going through some forms of depression. So I'm going to introduce her in a moment. But before I do, you guys, welcome. You know, our conversation, our purpose of the dialogue is that we're healing one soul, one conversation at a time. Healing souls, one conversation at a time. So you know that as I speak with you, you go, you think about the content, and you share it with someone else. And that's what we're doing today. In honor of mental depression, Mental Health and Depression Awareness Month, I am dedicating a lot of my segments for the next 2 weeks, as well as October, to the awareness about depression. So we're going to have some information for you at the end of the podcast. But let me go ahead and introduce my guest, the wonderful Tempestt Moore. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So this is one of my friends. We always get on the phone. We always talk and chit chat. We challenge each other. So with this specific one, this is really close to my heart, because I met her at a very, very difficult time in my life where I was coming out of my job. I was quitting my job last year due to me being pregnant, and she was so encouraging. And so over time, she has shared some of her experiences with me regarding depression. And I asked her if I could interview her. And at first, she sounded so excited about it. So it made me excited, because sometimes you don't know what you're doing, if it's helping people or not. But to hear her excitement, it actually made me extremely happy to be honored for her to tell her story on our show. So thank you so much for coming in today. So tell us your name, or just anything about you, anything that you want us to know about you before we get started.
I'm currently a community healthcare worker. I work with moms and children. I'm excited to be here today. I have some experience with depression within myself, family, friends. So I'm really excited to be with you. So thank you.
You're welcome. Now, I do want to ask you, because I heard you say that you have some experience with depression, but you also highlighted some of your friends and or family or just people close to you. Do you think that depression goes unseen or uncensored? Do you think that when people are around you, unless they absolutely say that they're battling with depression, that is something that you can see, or do you oftentimes think that it's hidden?
It's hidden. I feel like when people have depression at all, they express it in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Some are angry,
Mm-hmm.
of course, sad. Um, they take it out in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Some might run to drugs, alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
Some might run it to violence.
Wow.
So I think it's hidden, and we don't think of it as being depression. We
Mm-hmm.
might just say, "Oh, he acting out in school," or
Mm-hmm.
"She got a bad attitude. She doesn't listen," and and so on, or um, something is always wrong with her. She always complaining. She always sad.
Mm-hmm.
But we never put that word depression on that person.
I agree. Do you think that this is like, I know for both of us, we're African American Black women. Do you think that it falls into that stigma of being the strong Black woman? Because I know a lot of times if we do come out and say that something's wrong with us or something going on with us, we actually get looked at in a negative connotation. So do you think that we don't want to put the name or classify ourselves as having issues with depression because of how it will get us stereotyped or viewed from people?
Oh yes. I think oftentimes with any kind of mental health issues, people are often judged.
Mm-hmm.
If I was to come to maybe a friend, which is supposed to be a friend or a close family member, and say, I think I'm struggling with my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm depressed. Some people might say, "Girl, really? You ain't depressed. Like you just, So I think that we're human, and people expect us to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not the case. No
Right.
one's perfect.
Exactly. And I agree with you. I think there is no room for humanity to be yourself, your authentic self. And I think there are times when you're going through depression. And I think there are times where different situations come on. That's why I'm highlighting different people as to how they dealt with depression at different intervals in their life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead, for those of you that don't know, I'm going to give the clinical definition for depression. And it says, a mental health disorder characterized by persistently depressed mood, loss of interest in activities, causing significant impairment in daily life. It says possible causes include a combination of biological, psychological, social sources of distress. That can be social media in itself. Increasingly, research suggests that factors may cause changes in brain functions, including altered activity of certain neural circuits in the brain. With me piggybacking off of that, other words, it can be melancholy, misery, sadness, unhappiness, sorrow. I also put woe. Um, when you think about depression, when you were going through, I say it's like a dark phase. Was anybody else able to see? Could anybody tell? Was anybody alarmed?
No, I actually tried to hide it I couldn't hide it anymore. So I kind of feel like that, especially with kids, because that's when I was really going through a lot of my depression, is when I was a preteen,
Okay.
teen.
Yeah.
And I think that's what happens with a lot of kids. They have a lot of depression. They either hide it, they run to, drugs, alcohol. They start getting in trouble with friends.
Sexual intimacy.
Yes.
Promiscuity.
Yeah. So it's something that I hid from my family for a long time, that I was depressed. Because I was embarrassed to tell them. And it's so crazy that I was embarrassed because once I did, tell them that I was depressed, they said, "Why would it take you so long? I thought we were close. We shared so much with each other." But you also feel that form of guilt. You don't want to hurt them. So I think that's why I hit my depression.
And just to piggyback off of that, I think sometimes when it comes to parents and children, for some reason, parents automatically internalize like it's something I did wrong. So a lot of parents can be in denial. I know that I talked to several parents when their children were going through things, and immediately they just wanted to shut the scene down. They didn't want to talk about it. It was what goes on in my house stays in my house. But their children were suffering so bad, the children didn't even have an opportunity to actually say, "Hey, something's wrong with me." So if someone does come to you and say they're battling with depression or something something mental, make it comfortable for them and just help them to understand that it's not something that you have to take on yourself. This
Right.
might just be something they're going through. For instance, a woman, she has postpartum depression. It's not probably anything the man did. It's probably just from her being pregnant, all the changes. There's so many other things that can cause depression. I'm going to name a few of them for you guys. So, as I was doing some research on this, it gave so many different explanations as to how depression can come. It says bipolar disorder, seasonal affective disorder. That's like how we're going through it now. The seasons are changing. The sun is going to be going down earlier, so we're not going to have as much daylight. And so we know as that goes into December, that can bring about seasonal depression because of the sun. Psychotic, premenstrual depression, they say, okay, you could tell when a woman is on her period because she goes through mood swings and things like that. It says situational depression. That's basically a person it can be divorced, it can be a loved one passed away, a loved one committed suicide, you lost a job. That would be situational. Miscarriages, untimely death, all these things play a huge factor in moods. Moods of people. Now, I have an analogy, and I want to know what you think about this, Tempest. When I think about depression, I put it in 3 stages to basically compare it to life. Sorry, I had something in my throat. And what I did was, I said that to me, it's like The Walking Dead. Can you explain when I say Walking Dead, what that means to you?
Walking Dead. That's a good analogy. It's like you're still moving, but you don't have that life in you.
I agree. And so that's what I compared this to. We all know that when somebody dies or passes away, I compare it to 3 levels of death. What I mean by that is, the first level is like, sometimes people have said they know they could feel that they were going to die, and people have talked about it. Okay. So when I think about The Walking Dead, I think about a person that is on earth. They're not living, they're just there. It's like they're not in the moment, they're not present. They're just floating through life, kind of like in La La Land, but they're not enjoying life. They're not engaged. Okay. Then I feel like there's a second phase where after, you go through, that's like you're walking through life with your eyes closed. Then it's like this, to me, it's like the casket. That's what depression does to people. It actually puts them in a place of isolation. You don't see 2 people in a casket together. And ultimately, that's what depression is for a person. They end up isolating themselves in this bubble of darkness by themselves because they either think people don't understand, or going to judge them, or make fun of them because of this issue. The last one I compared it to, which is when it gets really, really deep. And that's like when the casket goes into the ground. And, it's like sealed. That's like ultimate darkness, because ain't nobody coming in there to get you out of that casket, and nobody's coming in there to get you out of the dirt. And so there are phases to depression. You could have a situation where you lose your job or quit your job, as what I just did. I only went through my depression for a couple days. I would say that's just like, oh, well, my eyes were shut and it was just dark. Okay. But sometimes there are deeper levels of depression. Sometimes it can last for 2 months, 6 months. It can be your whole life. Sometimes you feel like you've been battling with depression your entire life. Depression to me is just like a state of grave darkness. No light. You can't see your way through. You don't understand life. You don't know what's going on. You don't know which way to go. I think that also can lead to depression. Like if you have a relationship you're not sure about, a job you're not sure about, if you don't know your purpose or what you should be doing, and ultimately your relationship with God or lack thereof also plays a huge factor in depression. So we talked about the analogy. When you were going through this, did faith play a role in your depression as far as you coming out?
Oh yeah. I would say I started to actually when I actually went into the hospital for my depression.
Oh, really? Okay.
And a lady at the hospital prayed for me.
Wow.
Yes, don't make me tear up.
Oh my goodness.
But she prayed for me. After I got out the hospital, I started reading my Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to feel better. You know, reading scripture and just educating myself. And I started to feel better. I remember one time my mom was walking past the door. She said, "Are you okay?" Because I was reading the Bible. And she knew like something might be wrong because she went to the Bible. Like,
wow. Was your mom a believer?
Oh yeah. So
wow.
faith paid a big role. I would say it still does.
Were you saved at the time when you were going through depression?
No.
Okay. But I will put this disclaimer on there. You can be saved and still go through depression. Because depression, what it is, it's just darkness. And so I believe that faith played a huge part in my continual deliverance from depression. I feel like I go through depression if there's something that I know, something I'm trying to get to, someone I'm trying to get out of my life, things like that. When it's just darkness. It's just the unknown, and it could sometimes can create fear, and fear will also cause you to go into depression. It's a lot of the moods, but it's also a behavior associated with it, like alienating yourself, isolating yourself from people, and then you don't want to do any activities, you don't want to have any fun, you basically don't want to live. And the reason why I think this is so important is because this podcast, this specific series was dedicated to two people, but it was inspired by one specific woman. Her name was, I believe, Raven Johnson. And she was a fitness, she was a young woman. She was into fitness. She had a huge following. She committed suicide. Exactly. She had been dating this man for 2 years. And in her text that they put on social media, she said, "Hey, I can't help it. I battled with this since before I met you." And she just took her life. They did not detail how she took her life, but a lot of times depression is the darkness that leads up to suicide. Because it can get so dark. Sometimes you think that's your only resort is to take yourself out because it's so dark. How you feel is so, you just feel so alone. Sorry, guys. Of course, my little baby is in here. Here you go.
And to piggyback off the suicide, the majority of people that attempt suicide end up regretting it if they survive. So, I think we just need to get more resources out there. We need these stories from people saying, "Hey, I've battled depression. I'm just like you. I come from where you come from. I look like you. I have the same kind of job as you. I make the same amount of money as you. I have kids too. I don't have kids. And I think that would really help people out."
I agree with you. I think that if more people would come out, like now you're seeing a lot more celebrities. They're not necessarily coming out saying they're battling depression, but you can see so many of them are addicted to drugs. The anomaly and the weird part about that is because they are in the limelight. So many people are speculating over their lives and want to know their lives and living their lives. But I am starting to see this depression creep up so fast. And this is like being proactive to catch it, because we're going to go into November. We're going to go into December. Those are the holidays. For me and my daughter, we don't have family around us. So sometimes that can be dark. I remember there were times and seasons where I had to spend holidays by myself. I would call that holiday depression or anniversary depression, where someone has passed away or died. And every time their anniversary of when they passed away comes up, that person goes through depression. Some people learn how to celebrate it, but ultimately it's a grieving. It's a grieving that takes place. Now with your depression, we know that that's the outside surfaces. What was it? Was it something inside that was going on and or happening with you that caused you to streamline into depression? Was it something else?
We know growing up as teens, there's a lot of influence. We really care about what our peers think, and it could be the most outrageous thing, and we like really care about like what they think. So like just like self-esteem issues, appearance issues. In high school, I mean, a lot of girls go through that, like
exactly,
especially when this like how and like people like cracking on you, saying this like, oh, look at her hair, it's or look at her
Clothes, lack
clothes.
thereof.
Yeah. So all that kind of stuff. And it's just like the most, thinking back at it, like as an adult, it's like I let those issues get me that down.
Mm-hmm.
But as a teen, it's different. So
Of course it is, because as a teen, you don't know your own perception or your opinion of yourself, or how much you should value yourself. But this is ironic that you're saying this now, because social media has a lot of that bullying and acceptance rejection. And it's really bad, because a lot of people, even Regina King's son, before he committed suicide, he said it in his post that social media was too dark for him.
Yes.
And that's so sad, because this man has this wonderful mother, who is iconic with her acting. However, he commits suicide. So at the end of the day, did she wonder, was it an issue of my parenting? Did I spend too much time on the set? Was my son taken care of?
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, with depression, it's like you kind of know that something's wrong with you, but it sets in for so long. Me, I'm the type of person, even if I'm going through something, I go through things all the time. I still love to laugh and I still love to enjoy myself. So I'm always in a place of trying to come out of that mentality. Like on my previous podcast, it's called the Death of Depression. I talked about how when I was 16, when I went through depression. And when I tell you, I was like a little old lady. I would go to work. I would get off of work. I got off about 10 or 11. And on Saturdays, I would be so tired, I wasn't living. I would go home. I would tuck my curtains into the blinds to make sure there was no light. I would have some type of food or some type of snack, food, comfort. And then I would turn on Golden Girls at 14, 15 years old.
Wow.
But that also happened to me when I was 12. I went to go take care of my grandmother, and mentally and emotionally, nobody was really there for me to ask me was it okay or if I needed anything. So it was just me in the house taking care of this grown woman, not knowing if she was going to die or pass away. So do you think that depression is like a death to a person's self, who they are, what they like to do? Do you think it's them losing their self in that sense?
Oh, I would say depression takes a lot out of you. It takes you cut off social time with your friends and family. You're not maybe outspoken as you would usually be. I mean, it's a death to your personality.
Wow. I never thought about that.
So yeah, depression does. It takes a lot from you.
So my question is, because I've had jobs that I've worked at and been going through things at home. And at work, you have to put on this, because now when you apply for a job, and you probably, I don't know if you know this for sure because you've been at your job for a while, but when you apply for a job, they ask you, do you have schizophrenia? Do you battle with depression? All these different mental illnesses. But there are people literally that sit at their job every single day that are battling with mental illness, and these employees pay no attention to it.
Oh, yeah.
So my question is, with the field of work that you work in, and of course we can't disclose any of your personal information. We don't want to be in no HIPAA law violations.
Right.
The issue for me is all these services and all these places that offer remedies for depression. Why is it still an upheaval? And you probably can't answer that, and I don't have the answer for that either. But what type of preventative measures? Like when I think about it, for me, I feel like darkness is just bad. I hate the word energy. I'm not gonna lie, but to me, it's spiritual. And I'm a believer of God, Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, and stuff. I honestly believe that when you get with a person that's in all types of darkness, or it comes to your family line, only God can break that chain off of it for you. And I heard you say that you prayed and then somebody prayed for you.
Yes.
So I think that, do you think that's like the link? Do you think that's like the missing link, actually coming out and confessing so someone else can pray for you?
Oh, yes.
So, I mean,
I feel talking to God, talking to believers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it made a big difference.
I think so too. I think that the difference for me was, when I talk to people, perspective. It's once I get the perspective of it, for some reason, the perspective brings the light. For instance, I'll give an example. If you have a friend that's not a good friend, if you're around this person, every time you guys go somewhere or do something, this person, you feel the competition, like they have to dress better or look better, but you keep this person around and it chisels away at your worth and how you feel about yourself. Perspective would say, okay, we're friends, so hey, I'm just going to keep them around. That's darkness. The light says, I need to cut that off and get away from that because it's making me feel some type of way about myself.
Right.
That is, self-preservation. Because sometimes you can't help those people that are in that state. If someone's going to use you to make themselves feel better, you cannot help that person in that state. You'll sacrifice and martyr yourself. I feel like this segment was really important. I love the authenticity of it. And what we're gonna do now, I'm gonna ask you: Do you have any recommendations that you want to give to the people?
So I feel like find a support system. Uh, get the help. I know it's hard, and it's so easy for me to say, but you have to make that leap. But yes, a support system. There is a lot of community resources that help with mental health issues. Counseling. It's always good to vent to talk to people. Don't hold your feelings in. And sometimes you do have to cut ties with people. I feel like some people can make you depressed. We always think environment or certain situations in our life is causing depression, besides like being some kind of chemical imbalance. Besides that, we have like factors. And sometimes they are people.
Exactly.
Even if they're family, you have to do what's right for you.
Exactly. And I totally agree with that. I think that sometimes people can send you in such of an identity crisis. You think your identity is what they think and feel about you. I also believe that you can take that on. What I do now is I pay attention to how I feel about me around people. If I was okay and then my interaction with this person made me feel a certain type of way, I am what you would call an empath. I can feel my way through things and I'm like, okay, this is awkward. But me, I always want to make people cheerful and happy, so I'll just stay around, okay? But the thing is, we have a couple more minutes for this segment. So what I want to do, thank you so much, Tempestt, for coming on. I think this conversation was so important. I'm going to keep highlighting depression. On top of that, in October, I am going to be coming out with a class for people to take where it's going to give them information about combating depression, battling with depression, because a lot of people are not going to go to counseling, but they still need resources at home. I am going to give the national helpline is SAMHSA, which is SAMHSA. That's the national hotline. It is free, it's confidential, it's 24/7, 365 days a year. Treatment and referral information and services. So, when you think about depression, don't just think that it's a means to an end, that it just has to be over, okay? There are things that you are going to have to do to pull yourself out. You need friends, you need accountability partners, you need resources. More than anything, you need God and you need prayer. Another thing I want to add to, and I would probably do a segment about this, is TV. I am going to dedicate a segment about TV and music and things like that, and how those also aid into depression. Okay, so you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. You can check me out on the Dialogue. It's available on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, and a couple other platforms. If you go through my Anchor, you'll see the 6 platforms that it's available on. I'm available on social media through Patricia Tomlinson on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. It's just the Dialogue with the number 2. So we will be back with more content and information. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. My daughter was with us during this segment, so if you heard her in the background playing, just excuse that. She loves to hear. She loves to be heard. So thank you so much, you guys. You have a wonderful day. Stay tuned, and we'll be back with more episodes.